The Germans appeared, first gathered us at the market square. They surrounded several streets with barbed wire, and it was impossible to leave the ghetto. They only hired those who could work. Of course, they didn't give any eat.
Roman Schwarzman recalls how, as 5-year-old boy, he ended up in the Bershad ghetto in the Vinnytsia region. He says that if World War II had lasted 6 months longer, his family would not have had a chance to survive. It's about mother, brothers and sisters. At that time, his father and older brother went to the front.
We began to swell with hunger. I remember when it was already necessary to meet the liberation. We already lay such thick arms, legs, big belly, because the process was completely different with the body because of starvation. If another half-year or so of war had not been liberated, of course the number of people who were in the ghetto, to which there was no line before extermination, would certainly have been exterminated.
81 years old, Roman found himself at home again with the war, full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine. He says earlier they wanted to kill him because he is a Jew. Now they are killing him as a Ukrainian. If earlier he was afraid of death, now his biggest fear is losing his relatives.
For me, when the first days, when the war had already begun, I really was in the hospital then. For me it was scary. I did not believe it, and I have already begun to think not about myself, but about my children and my grandchildren.
Many Ukrainians during World War II sheltered and saved Jews from death. Subsequently, they received the honorary title of Righteous Among the Nations. In Ukraine, there are more than 2,500 people with such a title. 203 people are from the Odesa region. At the beginning of the 2000s, a birch grove was planted in Odesa, where each tree is dedicated to those who sheltered Jews during the Holocaust. It was named so Alley of the Righteous of the World.
In 1941, then still on the outskirts of the city, at this place started the road of death for tens of thousands of Jews in Odessa. Then they were taken to concentration camps. In memory of the dead, this memorial sign was erected here.
Director of the Odessa Holocaust Museum Pavlo Kozlenko has been studying the tragedy of the Jewish people for more than 15 years. Every year he organizes events dedicated to the Holocaust. Despite the threat of massive Russian missile strikes, he again gathers the residents of Odessa to remind them of these events.
Today you perceive it all in a completely different way, and the more you understand that everything that you did 15 years before was very important, because I have always talked about the need to preserve the memory of the Holocaust, so that this never happens again among any of the peoples. Today, unfortunately, we already equate to our time. Today we see mass graves, today we see collaborators. Unfortunately, everything repeats.
The most massive execution in Odessa was carried out on the territory of 9 artillery warehouses, which were then located on the outskirts of the city. After the explosion of the building of the Romanian commandant's office with a radio-controlled mine planted by sappers of the Red Army even before the occupation, the troops of the German army began to take revenge, to execute 200 residents of Odessa for one dead officer and 100 people for the life of one soldier.
On October 19, 1941, about 25,000 Odessa residents were burnt alive at this place. Most of them were Jews.
In the Soviet Union, talking about the Holocaust was forbidden. According to Pavlo Kozlenko, due to specified data, it is still impossible to count the exact number of deaths. However, it is known that every fourth victim of the Holocaust lived on the territory of modern Ukraine. Reported by Serhiy Kulas, Victoria Senko, UATV News.